You are listening to Para X.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Merry meet everybody, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron here on the Para X Radio Network. Where else? The Witching Hour by Midnight Syndicate was my opening song for tonight, and it was a good lead-in for both my guest and the topic of the show. Marius Stormcrow is here. He's a high priest, rune reader, magician. He's studied the arcane arts, Nordic paganism, and shamanistic practices for the past 25 years, and is considered an elder in the pagan community, which makes him the perfect guest to speak about pagan perspectives. And we're going to do a couple different ones, and there's a lot to talk about. So, Marius, welcome.
Hi, thank you. How are you today, Marla?
I'm good. Compared to the rest of the world that's buried in snow and cold, I'm, relatively okay. And will not bitch about the fact that I am freezing here because it's raining, because everybody would start throwing, rotten fruit at me.
Snowballs.
Because, cold here is not really cold, but what can I tell you? All right, so we are going to talk about 3 interesting talking points tonight. We're going to be talking about the pagan perspective on dark entities, on possession, and on banishing. Now, in the in the pagan world, dark entities and banishing are very commonly spoken about, used, utilized, all that stuff. But we don't hear so much about possession. I mean, that to me is usually discussed way more in demonology. And I think that's where my mindset is about it. So I think it's a good place to begin. And I know you go out on cases that are kind of dark and demonic in a sense. So I'm just going to toss it to you, and maybe somewhere along the line we need to kind of, in case people think that there is a certain pagan mindset in perspective, there is and there isn't, because we're all individuals and free thinkers, right?
Right.
So you're just
Marla,
go ahead.
Well, a lot of things from the pagan perspective, we don't believe in demons.
Right.
That's it in a nutshell. Demons are pretty much an Abrahamic faith issue. If we go back historically, the references to demons actually come from the Book of Enoch, the biblical Book of Enoch, and what a demon is in the Abrahamic perspective is an angel that rebelled against God for one reason or the other, and was cast out of heaven during a great war, and sent to live in hell, where their anger and their bitterness towards the throne of God, their mission is to bring souls into hell, or to lead souls astray so that they lead themselves to hell. And I think we really need to look at even the etymology of the word demon. And where the word demon comes from is the Greek word daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N, as opposed to D-E-M-O-N. And what a daemon was in the Greek thought was an intelligence. It was a unearthly intelligence. Muses could be a daemon. Protective spirits, things that influence you positively in the Greek thought, were daemons. Okay? And over the time in the course, while mostly the Christian church went out to convert the people, anything that did not come from the Abrahamic background actually was demonized. So a lot of the demons that are even brought up in perspective, okay, a lot of them were Canaanite, Phoenician deities that even the Hebrews turned around and said, well, no, we have one God, and if you worship Baal, which is a common demonic name that you find floating around, B-A-A-L, it's evil. So if it's not of God, it's of the devil. And ergo, Baal, which was a Phoenician god, even worshipped as far as Carthage, is demonic. In fact, we see this a lot through history, in the course of history, and to what a Christian demon is. If you look at some of the Icelandic baptism rituals, the Christian baptism rituals, do you disavow Satan? I do. Do you disavow Odin, Thor, and Freya?
Wow.
Because what was going on was they were trying to push their faith, and if it wasn't of God, it was of the devil. Now, one of the things with the pagan perspective is we do not believe in a Satan. Okay, and even the word Satan in its own right is a misnomer. What Satan is, in translation, is an adversary. And in some biblical references, it is your prosecuting attorney. So when you're sent to heaven to be judged, Satan is the guy who goes, well, on October 5th, you did adultery, and on October 6th, you bore false witness, and on the 5th of November, you cheated on your taxes. And on the other hand, you had your Gregory angel, or your watcher angel, who was your defense attorney, who said, well, wait a minute, he donated $1,000 to charity and helped that little old lady across the street, And when your sins were weighed versus your deeds, and we're talking, this is the Hebraic way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
You were a good enough guy, you entered into the kingdom of heaven. If not, you were damned to eternity in hell. Now,
so what you're saying, sorry to interrupt, but it just struck me funny that in that particular sense, going up there and being the prosecuting attorney, the devil was in fact the devil's advocate, yeah? I mean,
yeah.
What we would refer to as the devil's advocate.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is, I think, I'll give you another example, and maybe this will help clarify the whole line. We all know the term Lucifer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lucifer is supposed to be the devil, another name for the devil. But do we know what Lucifer really means? Lucifer is a bearer of light.
Right. Okay.
Right. So the Statue of Liberty is a Lucifer. It's a light bearer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And in the biblical reference, how you fall like lightning, O Lucifer, is reference to what they believe now through theological scholarship, is that they're referring to the king of Babylon. They're not even referring to the fallen angel. And even if you look back in Enoch, what we're looking at, and this is from the Christian perspective and the Judaic and the Islamic perspective. If you're looking at it, the book of Enoch talks about the Gregorian angels that lusted after women, came down to earth, mated with women, and taught mankind arts. They taught them how to wage war. They taught them metallurgy. They taught them astronomy and astrology. And because of this, they were cast down, which are really your original fallen angels, which the Christian sense believes are demons. Now, in the pagan perspective, we do believe in negative entities. There are universal energies out there because we understand that the universe operates in balance. And as there are positive entities out there, there are also negative entities out there. And that these entities can cause havoc just like the Judeo-Christian entities can. The difference is that I don't think the pagan, even in the old pagan ways, we're talking about the actual old religions, not the neo-pagan that we're looking at and that most followers of the old faith, the Wiccans and those community follow now. But the original, they're even to them. These entities were the ones that caused illness, fever, drought, famine, hail, foul weather. And so there was a litany of things that they would do to either A, appease them to get them to stop, or B, get rid of them, or to cast them or banish them away to keep them from causing harm.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a very, very different perspective. In the Christian perspective, demons have one mission. It is to lure the subjects of God away from godliness. That's it. That's their job, is to wreak havoc on mankind so that they no longer either A, believe or doubt or, lead them into temptation to sin, which in turn would cause them, in the Christian sense, to go to hell. In the early pagan perspectives, these negative entities were far more interactive into the daily life. Smallpox was caused by a demon. Early child death, was believed was attributed to Lilith, who originally was a Phoenician, then adopted by the Hebrew people. So we start to see that there are parallels, but there is much more of a vast difference between the two. What the difference was back in the Middle Ages, the Christian community got together and they started to really kind of rank and file all of the different things universally. In 1610, what they did was they created the Roman Rite. They took all of the prayers and all of the incantations and all the wrong word possibly for them, but all of the benedictions and everything, and they merged it together so that there was a commonality. This is the listing of demons, and this is who they are, what they do, what they command, what they give you. And you start to see that also in the practices of ceremonial magic, which is really heavily based on Kabbalah. So when you kind of look at the ceremonial magical practices that you get from books and grimoires that you conjure up dark entities and demons to do your bidding, most of those are based on Abrahamic faith, the books, 6 and 7 books of Moses. You have the Greater and Lesser Clavicle of the Keys of Solomon. Most of these are based on Hebraic Kabbalah. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, it is, again, another off-color way of looking at Christianity. Because a lot of them, you're invoking angels for protection. You're invoking holy seals in the names of God. And in turn, you're raising these demons up to do your bidding, to banish them away when they're done doing their deed. Now, one of the major differences is also when we're looking at demons in the Christian sense, they're sent away by the names and powers of God or Jesus Christ himself, right? How many times have we seen it on TV? The power of Christ compels you, right? In a pagan perspective, it is the individual person that has the power over these dark entities. We see that in the shamanic practices, where a shaman would go, if somebody came to them with a possession or an illness, the shaman would enter into a trance state to enter into the in-between worlds, or the worlds in between, and you would start to see that they would go in and either do battle or retrieve the soul that was lost because of the possession or the illness, and bring it back to the individual person. In the pagan philosophies and thoughts, it's the individual that has the power. So when we look at a banishment as opposed to an exorcism, because an exorcism, it is invoking the names and powers of Jesus Christ and of God, or El, Yahweh, Elohim, El Shaddai, however you want to, whatever gods are of the Hebraic faith, whatever names are being named, to command this dark entity out. In a pagan sense, it's you, your own self. It's your own individual power that commands the demon out. There's one famous pagan banishment where it says, earth has power over you, water has power over you, fire has power over you, wind has power over you, lightning has power, I have power over you. So when we're looking at it too, how we bind up a dark entity and send it is very different than what the Judeo-Christian perspective is. Because to us, it's the individual power, that you have that power. Now, a perfect example is that if you are of the Nordic pagan practice, you believe that one of Odin's sons had came down and populated and slept with the different classes and created the ranks of their culture. So in turn, no matter what class you are, whether you were a slave or a nobleman or a person of in between, you are a direct descendant of the gods of Asgard. Okay? You are, Odin is your great, 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 great grandfather. So within you is your own divine, godlike nature, which gives you, right, and you have, go ahead.
No, you're talking about it's within us to get rid of it and all that. Shouldn't it then, as far as pagans are concerned, be within us not to be possessed in the first place?
Well, see, now, here's the other thing. In the pagan culture, for being a pagan, not all possession is bad. Now, you're going to sit back and go, I don't understand that. What do you mean not all possession? Possession's horrible. We see it on TV, right? We see Reagan's head spinning around in pea soup and, all kinds of great stuff. But look at the voodoo faith. People that practice voodoo or Paulo or Kimbanda, where they bring in their god to speak through them. That's a form of possession. Right. They willfully open up their spirituality, open up their spirit being for the God to speak and act through them for healings and divination and other things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Same thing you see with a said witch of the Nordic tradition. A said witch traverses the world to communicate, to be entered by the God in which they're trying to communicate with for divination and knowledge and wisdom. So in the pagan perspective, opening up for a positive entity to come in, it's still possession. It's not a negative thing. We also see that with a lot of spiritualist mediums. When they go into trance mediumship, what's happening is they're allowing themselves to be opened up for the spirit to take over, to communicate, okay, to the person that they're trying to communicate to. So in the pagan perspective, not all possession has a negative connotation.
And I
From
just
the
got
Christian sense, there is.
I got a note in chat from Ceiling Cat. She says, well, what about drawing down the moon? It's possession by a lunar goddess, isn't it? Well, yeah.
Yeah, actually, drawing down the moon, but even let's go even further into the pagan practice, the charge of the god and the goddess.
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to really enjoy when I was working with a large coven was doing the charge of the god, because at that very moment, you are opening up your spirit for the god to enter you, and you really get the emotional and the feeling for that moment of being the god. And the same thing with the high priestess. They are opening themselves up to let the goddess, and that's how it opens up. You know, I speak the words of the God, may his words be mine. You're opening yourself up spiritually for the God to enter through you in order to utter those words, but the feeling and the emotion and the power that they should be said with. So
now,
we see that a lot in pagan practice.
Sorry, something when it comes to mind, I'm going to spit it out. Sorry. Let's talk about the difference between dark entities and demonics, because most people, when they think of possession, they think of demons, you know, little devil spawns,
right?
Rather than dark entities. So, and some may not know the difference between the two. So, can you kind of explain that?
Absolutely. The problem is in today's media and society, demon has become a word like Kleenex. And, you know, we don't say pass a facial tissue, we say pass a Kleenex, right? Or pass a tissue.
Right.
So that's what's really happening, really, I think, in today's, especially with the explosion of paranormal investigative shows. Everything is demonic. Everything is demonic. A poltergeist activity because you have two hyperactive teenage daughters in the home. Now we know, you know, through research that a lot of poltergeist, here's a perfect example, poltergeist activity, you have two 14-year-old girls, or 15 and 14, and the energy's ready to go pop. The energy goes pop, and the water turns on by itself. So they call it a paranormal team. Paranormal team sees it and goes, it's demonic. Baal and Belial has possessed your home. Okay?
Oh, you said the word. Sorry.
That's okay. The problem is that, number one, demonic possession, even to the Christian faith, is incredibly rare. The four criteria set for an exorcism done by the Roman Rite of 1610, to meet all those criteria is exceptionally rare. Okay? Now, there are dark entities out there. Now, to us, not everything is a demon. We're not even sure, and like I said earlier, if you look at the demonic mythology, what's really a demon? A demon is a fallen angel. Well, how many of the Canaanite, if we remove all the Canaanite, Phoenician, Nordic, any other god or anything else that was demonized, right? How many actual fallen angels are actually there that are true demons by the definition of fallen angel? Now, dark entities, on the other hand, there are parasites, there are other what we call intelligent hauntings. One of the very negative and dark is a revenant, found in Scottish mythology. A revenant is kind of like a spectral vampire that, for one reason or the other, it comes out, it attacks, usually in an act of vengeance, and it can become a very, very difficult spiritual being to deal with. We see dark entities in Japanese mythology, fox spirits, that are either they were murdered young women, or you see jilted or women that committed suicide become fox spirits and lure men to their deaths. We also have something even subtler. A lot of times what happens is, and this is maybe a good segue to this, what people do not understand is how these things come through. And they come through doorways to the other or to the nether world. And people, when they think of doorway, they automatically assume Ouija board, right?
Right.
That's the number one thing. It's the Ouija board. Oh, I had a Ouija board, and these horrible things, and I open up a doorway and I don't shut it. But people don't understand. With 28 3x5 cards in a wine glass, I made a Ouija board. But what about a spirit box? The void thing that they use to check. That's another opening. That's another thing to open up a doorway for these entities to come through. And in cases we're trying to pull entities through, right? We want to talk to Aunt Millie. Or we want to, Marilyn Monroe, are you there, right? And we open up a doorway. 9 times out of 10, the people become scared or do not know how to properly close that doorway, and it leaves that doorway open. Now, in a home, we put a lock on a door, right? We put a door on the threshold. Why? Because we don't want any old thing walking through to your house, right? You own a house, you got things. Right. If you left your door open, your TV be gone in the morning. So why would you open a door with any device and not close the door when you're done and put a lock on the door?
Right.
So, in fact, we just worked on a case not so long ago in Holy, New York, where what we discovered was they were experiencing a very, very nasty and negative dark entity. And in turn, what we found was it was a parasite, kind of like a psychic leech, because throughout the course of the years trying to discover what spirits in their home, they opened the door was left open, and this little, low, I wouldn't even consider it intelligent, and had one mission, to feed. And this psychic entity comes through the gate, comes through the portal, attaches itself to one of the members of the household, where it began to grow because it got all the food it wanted, and the more the reactions that were fear and anger, the bigger the entity got, just like you would if you were walking through a creek and got a leech on your leg. What happens is, the leech gets bigger as it feeds, right? Well, it's the same kind of concept. So what we had to do is we went around and we closed the doors and we removed psychically. You use Reiki practice is one of a really wonderful practice to remove these kind of auric attachments, and you remove it and you get rid of it. You put it back through the door. Goodbye, shut the door, lock the door, and the leech doesn't come back again, and that ends a lot of the problems. So we have a lot of different entities that are out there. That, like I said, some of them they're intelligent as in the fact that they're not residual. Okay? They're not, the memory of, like, when we look at the hauntings, right? You have residual hauntings, intelligent hauntings, poltergeist hauntings, and non-human entity hauntings. These are the lowest level of non-human entity hauntings, all the way up then till you get to dark aspects of divine. The gambit runs. So there is a very big difference between what we would consider demonic. Now, on the same hand, let's take a look at Buddhism, okay? They have demons, okay? But are their demons negative? No. There is not a negative Buddhist demon. because what their job is to destroy your world of illusion. They're there to help you. We see that in some of the aspects of Green Terror in Tibetan Buddhism. We look at other entities like jinn, okay, the Middle Eastern jinn, okay, where there are good jinn, okay, and there are bad jinn. So when we look at these kind of things, we have to understand at what level are these entities? What are they doing? What are they causing? What kind of harm are they causing? And in turn, that's how we decide how to rid ourselves of these entities. You know, sometimes it's just nothing more than a ritual cleansing, a ritual bath. You know, or what they call in the Reiki practice dry bathing, where you take the energy and you wash yourself with the energy to remove the negativity. Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes it's a full-blown ceremony. You know, sometimes it's a full ritual and formalized banishment procedures that, you know, each coven has their own, or each, you know, tradition has their own, just like the Roman Rite, or just like the Hebraic exorcism, or even, you know, what happens in the Islamic faith. So it all depends on what you're doing. So that's how you kind of really know what you're confronting. Not everything is, you know, the little spiked tail, bifurcated, scaly skin, 2 horns, cloven feet. That's not really how it is. So I think when we're looking at it from that, there's where things kind of differ also between the pagan understanding. The pagan understanding is we understand that there's these smaller, lesser, you know, easily dealt with because they're around us all the time. Compared to, again, the Abrahamic understanding that it's all of Satan. It's all demonic. It's all imps. It's all evil. You know, it's all there to lure your soul. In some cases, it's just there to feed, you know, eat off the negativity. And the more you feed it, the bigger it's going to get. The less you feed it, the more your positivity and things like that, it'll go away on its own. It's got nothing to eat. So that's some of the, I would think, the major differences between what we would call a lower level dark entity as opposed to, you know, the straight out demonic understanding.
That makes sense. Now, on the subject of dark entities, now they do make an appearance every so often and are called upon or summoned frequently in the dark arts, in black magic. Personally, I don't go there, but I would definitely like to hear your thoughts about the fact that they are used for specific purposes. Because people think that, you know, probably we're all, you know, boogie about it.
Right. Well, there was one thing that one of my teachers, the kind of gray spirit, brought to my attention one time. And she said, Marius, at no point do you ever conjure something you can't get rid of. And that's a very, very important thing, whether positive or negative. So when we're looking at it from that perspective, to use, well, let's go back to the rule of 3. Whatever we put out into the universe comes back to us 3 times 3 times 3.
Right.
Okay? So if that's the case, to conjure up dark entities, to conjure up that kind of negativity, and to release it into the world, the karmic debt alone, in my opinion, just wouldn't be worth it.
I agree.
Because there are plenty of positive ways of dealing with things. In the Nordic sense, you don't call up the Etten, okay, the creatures of chaos, the giants, right, to do bidding for a slight. Or if somebody injured you. Because there's the god Tyr, right, who's the god of justice. So you go to Tyr and say, Tyr, I need help and I need justice. Guide me to wisely do this. And through ritual and incantation, you know, you make your prayer, because what is a spell? A spell is but a ritualized prayer to Tyr, you know, if you of the Nordic tradition, or even some of the the Celtic gods of justice, or Bran, or the Dagda, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you would have that entity help you and guide you make the right decisions, as opposed to, conjuring up a dark entity or let's say a demonic force of vengeance to cause injury or harm, because that karma is due back to you threefold, according to the law.
Okay, but the loophole here is, and I've talked to several people that do dark magic and stuff. They don't believe in that. They don't care. I mean, take
right.
Strega. They say they are responsible for what they do, and they will take all the responsibility, but they're going to do it anyway.
Right.
Wiccans are considered to be fluffy bunnies because they do abide by the law of three.
Right.
So, I guess it's individual to individual. I think, life is hard enough. Why make it worse?
Right.
Be good, behave, Go ahead.
I look at it from two different perspectives. Being a Nordic pagan, a lot of times the rule of three kind of doesn't, we're not really bound by it either. It's a good rule to follow, kind of like the golden rule, right? You want to others as you would have them do unto you.
Sure.
We're bound by other stronger, for us, stronger rules of honor, justice, courage, bravery, self-reliance, what we call the virtues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Keeps us from doing silly things, in my opinion, right? This is what keeps us in line. The problem is that a lot of times what you hear about the fall. You hear about the crash and burn. When a lot of these guys go out there and they conjure dark entities and they push for more and they push for more and they push for more, well, eventually it does take its toll. Ask Aleister Crowley.
Mm-hmm.
Is a perfect example. Went from being a multi-millionaire heir to a beer empire to dying alone, ill, in a one room boarding house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It happens. If you think that the gods, from the pagan perspective, if you think the gods are going to let you run amok, they're not. And eventually everything is going to take its toll.
Sure.
We look at it different too. And we're going to branch this off, a lot of people go, well, what about like the Order of Set or Satanism or things on that line? Well, we have to understand that Satanism is backward Christianity. It's not paganism. And a lot of those organizations are more humanist as they are occult or pagan or magical practices.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at it from that perspective, well, who's doing it? Now you're looking at blood sorcery. Well, that's another one. You're going to reap what you sow eventually in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be very careful. Even they warn you, voodoo practitioners even warn you, eventually it's going to come back to bite you. Mm-hmm. Eventually you don't always win. Eventually, for every cool or dark voodoo practitioner, there's a positive voodoo practitioner balancing it out in every angle. And the other thing is that magic, and a lot of people don't understand that, and especially in the topic we're talking about, it's not like TV.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not the movies. It's not TV. It's not what it looks like from the perspective. There are not demons and boogeymen popping out at every corner. In the 20-some years that I have been doing cases and I've been practicing, I have seen three legitimate cases where a dark entity had infested another human being.
Mm-hmm.
3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of people have called, but a lot of times we have to filter it out. In this business, we have to be our own biggest skeptic.
Right.
If I go on a case, I bring a guy with when we go out, Supernatural Brothers Paranormal is one I'm affiliated with. What would happen is we have a guy with a psych degree. Every once in a while, we try to bring a licensed social worker with us and a medical professional.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And even when I get a case, I say, has a psychological evaluation been done? Especially in a possession case. Because there's dissociative personality disorder, there's schizophrenia, certain levels of bipolar, manic depressiveness that can all mimic the signs and symptoms of demonic possession.
Exactly.
So when we start looking at it, we really have to make sure that beyond when all other explanations are invalid, when we look at every possible angle, or if the case comes to me and they say, look, we've done an investigation, there's something going on, they've been to the doctor, they've been to the psychologist, we're at a loss. Okay, then we'll go and take a look, because then we actually have a problem. But that's one of the things. And you know what? A lot of times when we talk about those who practice the dark arts, we have to understand the reasoning why. Why are they practicing the dark arts to begin with? What happened in their lives, or what quest for power, how much megalomania, or how much more can one person possibly want? And understanding that there is a price to pay. The greater the magic, the greater the sacrifice. So when people are out there conjuring up, he braved demons to find the buried treasure, well, how many of those guys ended up rich?
Well, it's like selling your soul to the devil. There is
right.
payment, and if people are watching American Horror Story, when you ask Legba, for example, for a favor, you're in for a dime, you're in for a dollar. Yeah, that's just That's how it goes. Now, I want to, because we're going to run out of time if we don't get this in, but I want to kind of segue into banishment, because it's something that I believe to be very important and very necessary at times. But, we're talking about possession and exorcism and everything. All right, exorcism is definitely a type of banishment. But we sometimes banish things that aren't so bad and not in those situations. We go on an investigation and we do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, for example. We're not putting it, we're getting rid of some bad guys, but they're not bad guys, if you know what I mean, necessarily. Right. So maybe start out by explaining what banishment is, why we do it, and how we feel about it.
Well, first off, banishment basically is removing something unwanted from either yourself, from another, or a place, or a thing. If you have a bad habit, like smoking, you can perform a spell of banishment to banish the habit of smoking. You can, on the other extreme end, if there is something that is in your house or you're in an individual, what you do is you bind and banish that entity from that person or place. So there are as many different rituals out there for it as there is need for it, and as many different traditions for it. So it's really kind of hard to pinpoint one particular banishment. But I'll give you one of the things that we do for a dark haunting. One of the first things that we do is that we will spiritually prepare, or if I go in to get rid of a dark haunting, I'll spiritually prepare. Ritual bathing, the salts and, the incense of fumigation, so that your mind, and you do that more for your mindset, okay? Right. To get your mind ready for the operation that what you're going to do. And you should do that before any form of magical working. It is very important that your mind is in the right place. And once we get there, what I do is I will take a room and I create what I call the safe room. So I mark the doorways and cast incantations on the doors and all the windowsills to prevent anything, and now this is going to sound odd, from getting out. Okay? Because what I want to do is, now here's one of the problems. Somebody has a entity problem within them. Say there is an obsession. One of the levels of possession is obsession. Okay? So pardon, they're all obsessed about possessed and what's bothering me and why me. So obviously that person is in the early stages of a true possession. So if I pull that entity from that person and bind that entity from that person, where's it to go? To the next person? Or run amok or leave to bother somebody else? For me, responsibility says no. If we're going to send that entity back, it needs to go back. It needs to go back to whence it came. So from there, what we do is we bring the person in. We have a ritual that, wouldn't be fair to those who taught it to me to talk about the ritual itself. But in the nutshell, what happens is that we take the entity and we bind it into a bowl of water.
Right.
And send it back through the doorway. So that it's no longer on this, or we believe it's no longer on the plane. It's no longer on our plane of existence. So that it's gone. Now, we can do that really simply, even in your own home. A lot of people use sage, right? They'll go through their house and they'll sage. That's a form of banishing. You open up the windows, you walk around the house with sage or something that you feel comfortable with. I don't use sage at all. It's a wonderful thing if it has a connection to you.
Right.
I don't really feel connected with sage or the sweetgrass or the cedar because my culture, is very European and it's something that I don't use. Okay, but a lot do. And if you feel comfortable with using it, by all means, sage, cedar, sweetgrass, you use what is comfortable for you. What feels right for you. I use a blend of incenses that I blend. And what I do is I fumigate the room with each window open, and it's something as simple or, it could be a very complicated. You could do a pentagram, a banishing ritual in each room, or as simple as saying, out with the negativity, in with the positivity, in each corner. Out with the negativity, in with the positivity. There's banishing rituals with brooms. Where you walk where you walk widdershins to draw in, you walk clockwise to sweep away. Yeah. So there's a lot of different banishment rituals, and there's a lot of different things that you can do. A lot of it too, people that have negative hauntings in their home of what they believe are intelligent human hauntings. I tell them, stand firm. Say, this is my house, not your house anymore. Be gone. Go home. Cross over. Go to the light. You're not welcome here anymore. That's a form of banishing. Right, exactly. Just by the mere fact of standing and taking control and affirming your power over an entity is a form of banishment. And that's the same thing. You want to quit smoking, and we go back to the simple banishments, right? I want to quit smoking. Or I have a negative person in my life, right, that I want to be rid of. I don't want that person harmed, but I don't want them in my life anymore. The key thing is to perform your ritual, to prepare your mind to push that person aside and say, look, this person is no longer in my life. On the other hand, too, is that you have to change what you do in order for those banishments to work. And the same thing goes with a house banishment. I've gone into homes where the places have been in total disarray. And I go, well, no wonder you have negative energy, because there's nowhere for this energy to go. Right. Clean your house. Call me in a month. Square away your life and then see if there's positive things changing, because when you enter positive energy, it's going to banish the negative energy. So there's a lot of different things that you can do from that perspective. Christians will use a prayer, holy water. It's a form of banishment. So it all depends on, like I said, your tradition or what your beliefs are, and the fact that we have to understand that in order for us to be successful, we have to believe that we are going to be successful. That when I walk into a home, I walk in with, I'm here to deal with this issue. I will deal with this issue.
Yeah, doubt will shoot you in the foot.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. You can't doubt yourself when you're doing the job.
Yeah.
So, and that's really important for anything that we do. If you're going to quit smoking, you better be convinced, today is the day I'm going to quit. And if you have the right mental attitude, same thing with illness. There's a lot of stories where people have done banishments for illness. People with cancer, that are working towards remission. I'm going to banish this cancer. And they're going to, they perform a ritual of healing and cleansing, and but you can do all the chemo, and you can do all the radiation treatments, and you can do the everything that you're supposed to do. But if your mental attitude isn't strong, and you're not positive, you're not going to get better. You're not going to banish that illness from you. So a lot of this really too is bringing in that light, that inner light, out, and especially when you're dealing with hauntings or negative energies. You have to be the beacon of light when you walk in there. You cannot doubt yourself one iota. And that's where, I'm very, where I get disappointed, especially at times with a lot of the shows. Because what they'll do is they'll raise these things up. You see, 30 minutes of, I think we're being chased by a demon or this terrible negative energy. And they come out and they utter some prayers, and okay, it's all better now. Well, where's the follow-up? It's not all better now. So we have to look. Did they take back their home? Were they positive? Did they follow through? Because if not, you're going to have the repeat problem. And that's one of the things I tell people that, who I've gone to help, is that I don't want to be back here in a year. My goal is to shake your hand, walk out this door, and things are done. And if there's a perpetual problem where, I understand, but there are things that you have to do.
Right.
I can bind this thing up. There's a running joke. At one point I had said that, what did you do this weekend? And I said, well, I took the negative entity and I put it in a bowl of water and I flushed it down the toilet. And the guy goes, dude, that's not funny. And the guy next to him goes, well, he's not laughing. What we do is a serious business because really people's lives, are at stake. But as it goes, it's all about positivity, and it's all about your own personal power. It's about going in there and being able to be strong enough to confront what's out there. And that really is what banishment really is. Though we formalize it through ritual and we have, techniques and procedures, just like anything else, just like the Roman Rite, there are, pagan exorcisms and banishments. But on the same hand, it is a different story. I'm not using a deity. I'm asking deity for help. I may ask deity for guidance and wisdom, but the power does really, truly come from within. And that goes for a lot of things. Whether you're banishing a bad habit or whether you're banishing a negative, a major negative entity in your own. Or into that is possessed another person.
Exactly. Time is running out really quickly, so I really want people to know, in case they need to get in touch with you or want to know more about you, where can you be found?
Right now, I'm affiliated with a paranormal group called Supernatural Brothers Paranormal Investigations. We're right on Facebook. Just put in Supernatural Brothers and we pop right up. That's probably the best way, especially dealing with anything with hauntings or, negative entities or things like that. And we do answer questions. If you're in the upstate New York area and you do have a problem, we do judge things on a case-by-case basis. And we will, and we do work within members of the pagan community and other members of the paranormal investigative community. So, yeah, that's the best way, especially on this topic and dealing with anything, if you think you have a haunted house or anything like that. That's the best way, and it's Supernatural Brothers Paranormal, and we are on Facebook. And like I said, the easiest way, just leave a message. It is an open board, so leave a message, and we will try to help you.
That's great. Well, again, there's so much more to talk about, and we'll have to pick this up at another time because, it's an open book and so great. But again, thank you so much for being here tonight. And
Marla, thank you for having me. I do appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. And I want to thank everybody else for listening in too. And please note here, stay tuned to Para X. We have a new show coming up called Happy Mediums with Lily Alley and Deborah Freeman. And Tim and I will be joining them tonight, so stay with us right after we get done. And until next time, everybody, blessed be and merry meet again. Good night.
Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at this same time for another great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2013. Moonlight Haw by Kevin MacLeod, licensed through Incompetech.com.